Hello, Talking Fight fans around the world. How are you? We have Bola, the champ, coming at you with the scoop on Talking Fight once again, a Friday night here in Toronto. And what do you got for us tonight, champ?
Well, one of the attributes of athletics, more importantly boxing, that I find fascinating is the whole evolution of the craft. Throughout history, this can be seen usually with the changing of the guards, in that when a new dominant champion is crowned. When Sonny Liston destroyed Floyd Patterson in the first round in the world title fight, the boxing world took notice and recognized that Liston's style was one of greater success. Now, he plodded forward with huge clubbing punches and, won the title. A few fights later, Liston is now set to dance with Ali, and only to shake up the status quo again. Now, standing around, staying grounded while delivering mountain-moving blows was eclipsed by a fast, backwards footwork with stinging punches. Now, this was the status quo for boxing for over 2 decades post this fight, only to then have the Peekaboo scenario come to play in the way of Mike Tyson. And the evolution goes on and on and on. Today I'm talking about a man that was integral to the evolution of the sport of boxing, who was an amateur boxer and was denied his professional license due to an eye injury, which he claimed he got in a street fight, but then others say it was due to a beating by the hands of his father. In the man's 5 decades of being in the sport, he worked with several world champions, but notably, he managed one, trained two, and in doing so changed the course of history. The 2 that he trained, one became the youngest ever heavyweight champion in the world. The next one eclipsed that record as the youngest heavyweight champion in the world. Not bad. Not bad. My name is Bola Ray, and this is a scoop. So born January 17th, 1908, to Italian-American parents, was one Constantine Cus DAmato. The Cus. Growing up in New York in his early years was one where he dedicated his trajectory to actually becoming a Catholic priest. His father, like many in the day, ruled the household with an iron hand, and what that methodology teaches is that might is right. And so it wasn't long before Cus was actually lashing out and having street fights. Well, it was not said when his actual beginnings in boxing was, but it was during his teen years that he took up the sport. And he went on to have a decent amateur career, to the point where he was longing to try his hand at the professional game. Now, unfortunately, his license was never cleared to his eye injury, so instead of hanging up the gloves for good, he became a coach. Now, he tried. He opened up his first boxing scenario, and called it the Empire Sporting Club, with his trusted friend Jack Barrow at the Grimacy Boxing Club. Now, keep in mind, Cus was 22 years old when he's done this, so good on you. At the beginning, Cus actually and literally lived in the gym. And he did this for years. Being a new young trainer, he learned the harsh lessons of the sport the hard way. Being a good trainer is a blessing, but the reality is that connected managers will go off and poach your athletes because they're good, because you've done such a good job. That's your thanks. That's what history will give you as a thanks. So, and this happened to him quite a few times. This is the case in one Rocky Graziano, who, after starting his pro career with Cus, was poached and then went on a few short fights afterwards to win the world middleweight title. Now, Cus and his good friend Howard Cosell worked to and succeeded in bringing down the International Boxing Club of New York, or the IBC. Okay, this was a corporation that was created to host boxing bouts in Madison Square Garden. The IBC went on to secure some top name fighters, and with that, yeah, they ended up running a monopoly in boxing. They were the only game in town. 51 fights were held one year, 47 by them. Now, where there's a monopoly, not far behind, you will find the mob, as true as rain. And there they were. In 1960, the Senate Subcommittee on Antitrust and Monopoly Chair by Senator Estan Kefauver held a hearing into organized crime and professional boxing. It revealed that the IBC had ties to mafioso Frankie Carbone. Yeah. Frankie is a soldier of the New York Lucchese family. This is, yeah. Who had been a gunman in Murder, Inc.
Wow.
They actually went and named themselves. I just see that as heat, but what do I know? At the time of the hearing, Carbone was imprisoned in Rikers Island, having been convicted of the undercover management of prize fighters and unlicensed matchmaking. Okay. The hearing revealed that Carbone's wife was employed by the IBC at a salary of $45,000 a year in 1960. For the record, that equates to $403,000 a year today. What was she doing? Yeah. The following year, Gibson Jr. and Carbone's partner, Frankie Blinky Palermo, a member of the St. Louis crime family and Los Angeles mobsters, Joe DeSica, and not to be forgotten, Louis Dragna, were charged with conspiracy and extortion against the National Boxing Association welterweight champion, Don Jordan. Now, after a 3-month trial in which the U.S. Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, served as the prosecutor, the defendants were convicted and sent to federal prison. And then they wonder why the Kennedys got whacked by the mob. For these reasons, Cus refused to have his fighters fight on their cards. Now, under Cus's tutelage, Floyd Patterson captured the Olympic middleweight gold medal in 1952 in Helsinki. DAmato then guided Patterson through his professional ranks and maneuvered Patterson into a fight for the title that was vacated by Rocky Marciano. So he ended up, after beating Tommy Jackson in an elimination fight, he was set to square off against none other than Archie Moore, of which he ended up stopping him in the 5th round and became the youngest heavyweight champion ever. At the time, he was 21 years old, 10 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. He was the first Olympic gold medalist to win a professional title. Patterson and DAmato split after Patterson's second consecutive first-round knockout by the hands of Sonny Liston, but their relationship was actually deteriorating prior to that. So it is what it is. Now, DAmato also managed another world champion by the name of José Torres, who in May of 1965 at Madison Square Gardens defeated International Boxing Hall of Famer member Willie Pastrano to become the world light heavyweight champion. With the victory, Torres became the 3rd Puerto Rican world boxing champion in history and the first Latino light heavyweight champion. Not a bad distinction. There is a report that says Cus apparently could have trained Muhammad Ali, but chose not to. And according to Cus, he claims that he didn't want anything to do with the Ali circus. Now, Ali and Cus were friends. And in his recollection, Ali would listen to him, but did not give that kind of respect to his own trainer, Angelo Dundee. Now, Cus went on to claim that he asked Angelo, why do you put up with that kind of nonsense? At which point in time that Angelo said, well, because it helps all his other fighters get on fights because of their association with Ali. When Angelo was asked the exact same question, he claimed that it not to be the case, that Ali didn't want to train with Cus, but he did agree that he was underpaid, that Ali often underpaid him. Now, it also needs to be said that Ali and Cus were actually really good friends. Ali had the utmost respect for Cus. When when Ali was going through his problems with the U.S. government and was forced to, well, not compete, not earn a living for 3 years, Cus often gave him money to keep him afloat. So, and Ali never forgot this. After Patterson and Torres' careers ended, DAmato worked relatively obscurely. He eventually moved to the Catskills, New York, where he opened a gym and called it creatively Catskills Boxing Club. He convinced Camille Ewald, who was soon to be his wife, to not sell her 14-bedroom home in the Catskills, but turn it into a training center for wayward boys. And that's the property where the boxing gym ended up being. There he met and began to work with the future heavyweight champion of the world, Iron Mike Tyson, who was in a nearby reform school at the time, actually. He ended up adopting Tyson after his mother passed away, around when Tyson was still like 12 or 13 years of age. DAmato trained him for over the next few years, encouraging him to use his trademark Peekaboo style, where your hands are held high, but the big thing is that you actually stand square to your opponent. But it's very difficult to actually penetrate. Now, some people felt, or at least more importantly, he came under great criticism with that style, because they said that, well, how do you launch an offense from that position? Made all sorts of stuff up, but history shows that it was actually rather devastating. When everybody was looking at like floating high and imitating Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson came underneath and submarined everybody with the Peekaboo style. So, yeah. He ended up also bringing in a couple of apprentices, in one Teddy Atlas and another one in Kevin Rooney, who are two of some of the best trainers the continent has ever seen. So he really did a lot for the sport. He changed the trajectory of the sport simply by introducing Mike to that style, and then Mike dominated with that style. And then some other people tried to copy that style. So he always claimed that he knew the answer to Ali. Floyd Patterson, who also somewhat did the Peekaboo style, nowhere close to as efficiently as Mike did, but did the Peekaboo, proved not to execute that style very well, because Ali beat him up not once but twice. But when Ali did beat him up, Cus wasn't in the picture. So, yeah. Now, it's unclear as to exactly which age, 11 or 12, Tyson became seriously interested in boxing professionally. But there's one Irish Bob Stewart, a former Golden Glove champion, was approached by Tyson while working as a counselor at the Trivon School for the Boys, his reform school. Tyson knew that Stewart's former boxing glory, and specifically asked to speak to Stewart, who immediately took a gruff attitude towards Mike, because, well, Mike was Well, he had a terrible behavior. He was like beating people up all over the place. He was just a troubled man child. But he ended up giving in, and he worked with Mike for a bit. But then after a certain point in time, he said that there's nothing more that I could teach you. So he passed the reins on to Cus DAmato. He introduced him to Cus DAmato, and they were together until Cus's death. Now, Cus died, unfortunately, before he was able to see Mike become the world champion. He died 1 year prior, just over a year prior. So Kevin Rooney ended up taking him across the finish line to that destination point. Mike and Cus had an incredible relationship. Mike, as I've said, was a troubled youth, to say the least. And again, at 12 years old, he weighed 190 pounds. He was a handful to the average man, let alone a 70 some odd year old man. So Mike went and said how when he was the one person that actually he feared ever was Cus DAmato. And Cus didn't have to, he never physically abused him or anything. He's just by talking to him. He'd have these fights. You'd have a fight where everyone in society would say, wow, that was a devastating fight. He did X, Y, and Z. He was just unbelievable. And then Cus would go, Mike, let's have a word. And that's all it took. Mike feared but respected and loved that man like there's no tomorrow. And he attributes him to being the reason why he was so successful as a professional, offered his contribution to history. He was incredibly grateful too. I think rightfully so. Patterson, what's it called? November 4th, 1985. Cus succumbed to pneumonia at the age of 77. It was a tragic day. I actually remember that. I just remember thinking, I didn't know what Mike was going to do. I guess like your world just bottomed out from underneath you. So, but yeah, he was a sensational man, and he is truly missed. I really wanted to do this segment on him because, again, it's one thing to be a great fighter, a great trainer, and you get some talented kids in or what have you. But I think it's a totally different thing to literally be that Cinderella story, taking a kid from nothing like Mike and putting him on top of the world. But then he went even one step further than that, and he changed the trajectory of the sport. Whoever's up on top, everybody wants to emulate, especially if you're dominant for a while. Like Muhammad Ali was dominant for over 2 decades. And then his protege, Larry Holmes, was dominant for the better part of the next decade. Everybody was standing tall and fighting like Ali and Holmes and whatnot, only to have this little fire hydrant come along and take everybody out at the knees. Changed the trajectory, showed the imperfection in that style, and helped the sport evolve. That is a legend. And with that, that's my show. if you enjoyed this show, please hit the like button and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. It's your boy Bola, and that's the scoop.
Very well said. That was a great story, and a great story of evolution too, because not many people can truly put these pieces together and take us through how the sport has evolved the way you just did, and you did so really eloquently, quite frankly. Very well done. It's always nice to hear those trainers, those behind the scenes, those unsung heroes get the credit that they're due, because you spent the week doing that this week and telling us about who are these men sitting in the corner, so to speak, and how have they changed not only the fighters but the sport itself. And tonight's a great example of changing not just the fighter but the actual game itself. So yeah, well done. Thank you. Righto, it's Friday, it's the weekend. I guess we'll see you on Monday.
Will do.
Same time, same bat channel. All right.
Cheers.
See ya.